everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in to video number 7 in the Political Science video blog series. This is Politics with Roger. What we're going to be discussing today is some of the philosophies and philosophers of the United States Constitution around 1776, 1789, when that government was set into place. And just to talk about some of the people and ideas that developed into the government that we know today, or the doctrine that we know today, the Constitution of the United States. Our previous lesson, if you missed that, video 6, lesson 6, was an introduction to constitutionalism and the American Constitution. There'll be some overlap with that lesson here, but let's just dive right in. So one of the first and most important philosophies that it made up the foundation of the Constitution of the United States was natural law, which again we talked about in the last video, where our rights as men or women come from God, come from a creator. It doesn't come from other men, and that's such a key point, because up until that point in the history of mankind, your rights came from your king or from or your ruler. Your ruler was the one who said, okay, you can or cannot do something. The United States Constitution was the first government that said, no, our rights come from our creator. We have certain inalienable rights that simply cannot be taken away from other men. As we remember, the Declaration of Independence cited our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But there's also a lot more that goes along with natural law. That is a social contract theory and natural rights, which can best be described in layman's terms as the kind of laws that we already intuitively know as human beings. For example, you don't have to tell people it's wrong to kill other people, for the most part. I mean, I know there's always exceptions to the rule. It's those things that we kind of already feel in the heart. It's not good to bully somebody. It's not good to just walk up to someone on the street, even if you're bigger than them, and push them around and take their wallet or their purse. We just know those things are wrong, and we know those things are wrong because of natural law, because of what has been put into us by our Creator. Now, I'll just point something out. Even if you're not religious, many of the founding fathers, most of them were Christian, most of them were believers in Jesus Christ, but even those that were not Christian still believed that we had a creator, whether it be Mother Earth or whatever it was. They believed in intelligent design. Thomas Jefferson, I believe, was a deist. Ben Franklin, a deist. Maybe not necessarily pure Christian or Christian in the definition that we've become used to, but they still believed in a creator. Darwin's theory of evolution didn't hit the scene until 1860, or right around that time. So the theory of evolution, they didn't know about the theory of evolution when the Constitution was being developed. So the idea that we were endowed by a creator is critical in the making of our Constitution, because our rights come from that creator, no matter who you personally believe that creator is. That's where our rights come from, and not from man. So natural law was a big thing. There were philosophers like John Locke, Edmund Burke, that were religious men that argued on this behalf, and I suggest that you guys take a look at some of the lives and teachings of those guys, because they were instrumental in the development of the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights. John Locke talked a lot about the right to free thought, the right to question the government, and that doesn't even seem like a big deal to most Americans today, because we've gotten so used to those rights. But if you've ever lived in a country where you can get thrown in jail for saying something wrong, or saying something speaking out against your government, you would know that these are really precious rights that we have in this country. Um, the right to free thought. I mean, it seems like an extreme example, or it used to seem like an extreme example, like to watch video of North Korea and how people in the mind control in North Korea, how people were enslaved by this mind control. Um, it seems like we're trending in that direction. Again, I guess this is more for the later classes that we'll talk more about this. But the right to free thinking, the right to free thought, the right to question the government, this is all part of our natural rights. This is all part of our inalienable rights as American citizens. And this was a philosophy that kind of helped us to develop our Constitution. Um, another important philosophy was the spontaneous order, or a general equilibrium, and this kind of dovetails with natural law and natural rights. But Adam Smith, who's a great economist and philosopher around that time as well. Check out Adam Smith's writings. Believed in a general equilibrium. And in fact, he's not the only one. A lot of the founding fathers of the time believed in what we call today the free market. And we call that, again, a spontaneous order, a general equilibrium, that we don't need government to tell us, or to micromanage us, I guess would be the best way to put it. People who are working in their own best, or who are working in their own self-interests, benefits the entire society, because people will behave in the most efficient and effective way when they're operating on behalf of their own self-interests. Now, and I can hear some people saying, well, what about greedy people who are just out there, trying to enrich themselves and don't care about anybody else? That's a good example. That's a good thing to talk about, because even individuals like that we're describing still would manage to produce a lot of goods and services for the rest of society. Even if they take all the money that they earn and hoard it, they're still providing goods and services to the public and to everybody else, even in that situation. So, and most people aren't like that, but the idea of a spontaneous order, a general equilibrium, a free market, and this is a lot about what Adam Smith had talked about, was something that the founding fathers were very aware of when creating our Constitution and creating our Bill of Rights. They wanted to nurture this free market philosophy, and as a result, this empowered the individual. And I guess that's another concept to come to, or that was the result of all this, is that individuals were empowered by these philosophies, and they focused on these philosophies for the empowerment of individuals. Adam Smith also argued about within the free market competition, and he also philosophized, or he also hypothesized that the entire country would benefit from the distribution of wealth to what they would call the common people. Again, this was a philosophy that supported empowerment of the average citizen to earn money. And another big part of this was private property rights, which was I'm just looking for in my notes here. This was also a huge philosophy of Edmund Burke as well. Actually, John Locke. I mean, private property rights is just another philosophy that was critically important in the development of the United States Constitution and our Bill of Rights, where, again, all this comes back to empowering the individual, that an individual acting on their own self-interest would not only empower that individual, but also benefit the entire country, the entire citizenry. And, we can look back, 250, 200 and, 75 years later, almost 300 years later, almost 250 years later, that they were largely correct. And we know that because the United States has become the most powerful, highest producing country that the world has ever known. And it was all built on these philosophies of empowering the individual. So, John Locke, Edmund Burke, Adam Smith, Natural law, spontaneous order, the civil society, harmony of interests, general equilibrium, shared interests. These are all concepts, philosophies and philosophies that were present in that day, and these were some of the philosophers that promoted these ideas that developed our United States Constitution. Another quick point I wanted to make was also separation of powers, which we've heard about. This was made popular by a French philosopher, Charles Montesquieu, around 1750. And that was basically, again, checks and balances within a government so that power cannot be consolidated and centralized. Because when power is consolidated and centralized, then basically you have a government that can dominate all other, can basically just dominate the entire society. So separation of powers was very important. That's why we have three branches in our government. You guys remember from your civics classes, the executive branch, the legislative branch, and judicial branch, all which work as checks and balances against one another. So that was another important philosophy that made it. I just want to talk briefly about some of Thomas Jefferson too, because he's just one of my favorite philosophers and politicians of all time. He talked about the limits on liberty, and we need to talk about limits on liberty because it's like, okay, we're in a free country, we're empowered to do basically what we want to do, but what are the limits upon that? Because you can't just do whatever you want, whenever you want, wherever you want. What are the limits? There's got to be some kind of limits, and the limit is pretty easy. The line is drawn, and it's pretty easy to know where that line is. Thomas Jefferson had said, "Rightful liberty is unobstructed action according to our will, within limits drawn around us by the equal rights of others." To put that into modern English, or maybe layman's terms, our rights end at the point where we begin to infringe on another individual's rights. Meaning you can do pretty much whatever you want up until the point you start taking away somebody else's rights with your actions. Makes sense, right? This is exactly what Abraham Lincoln debated against Stephen Douglas while the Civil War was raging. Stephen Douglas was a proponent of slavery in the South. And the argument that he was making was, hey, this has been an institution that's been around a long time. We don't really know what the impact of ending slavery is going to be, and it's not our place. And he was using the states' rights argument, which was a legitimate argument. Now, I don't want people to misinterpret that as that I support slavery. I support states' rights. But this is what the argument that Stephen Douglas was making, that, hey, the states have their right to choose whether or not this is legal, or whether or not this is good, or whether or not they want to proceed with this. And Abraham Lincoln used that. Thomas Jefferson's, he didn't use his quote, but his idea to counter that argument. He said, look, we have liberty in this country, but our liberty ends when we take away the liberty and rights of other citizens. And that seems like a better argument than Stephen Douglas's argument. But anyway, as we know, Lincoln won the election, and that's a discussion for another time. But that's the limits on our rights, and that was something that Thomas Jefferson was big on. Another philosophy that Thomas Jefferson was big on, and this is also very important, is a trial jury by our peers. Imagine if you got arrested and the police department that arrested you was also the jury. I'm not saying that people can't be fair and that maybe the police department wouldn't be fair, but it sure is a lot better to be judged by your peers than it is by the same institutions that arrest you. Imagine if you're speaking out against the federal government and you get arrested, and these are the people who are going to judge you in a trial. Again, this would not, that kind of policy would not be conducive with a free society. It would lead to tyranny very quickly. One could hypothesize, and we know that anyway. We know from history that that's true. So, a trial by a jury of peers was also another big philosophy that Thomas Jefferson pushed. that was very important again in the formulation of our democratic republic, in the formulation of our Constitution. But anyway, summarize: natural law, God's law, social contract theory, natural rights, spontaneous order, the civil society, harmony of interests, separation of powers, limits on liberty, trial by jury of peers. Philosophers and great thinkers like Thomas Jefferson, John Locke, Edmund Burke, Adam Smith, and of course a lot of the other founding fathers were really smart. I just want to highlight some of them. Thomas Paine's in there. These were some of the philosophies and philosophers that helped us develop our democratic republic in 1776 during the Revolutionary War and post-Revolutionary War to give us our United States Constitution. And check those out if you want to take a longer look at them. But we'll circle back to some of these ideas and philosophies and philosophers at a later time. I hope you got something out of this video. Thank you for checking out video number 7. We'll come back in video lesson number 8 and talk about some of the rights that we have that are outlined in the Bill of Rights and some of the amendments. So anyway, thank you for checking out the Political Science video blog series here at Politics with Roger, and we'll see you guys next time.